Hello, everyone, and welcome to my poetry recitation of God's Grandeur by Gerald Manley Hopkins. I will begin with the poetry reading portion of this video and then move on to the analysis of the poem. I thank you for watching. The world is charged with the grandeur of God. It will flame out like shining from shook foil. It gathers to a greatness like the ooze of oil crushed. Why do men then now not wreck his rod? Generations have trod, and all is seared with trade, bleared, smeared with toil. And where's man's smudge and shares man's smell? The soil is bare now, nor can feet feel being shod. And for all of this, nature is never spent. There lives the dearest freshness deep down things, and through the last lights of the black west went, oh, morning at the brown brink eastward springs. Because the Holy Ghost over the bent world broads with warm breast and with bright wings. So I just want to talk about a couple of things. I think that this poem is just as relevant today as it was at the time. I believe it was written in 1877, and it had to do with, obviously, industrialization, which had caused pollution in many urban areas by this point. 1877, the Industrial Revolution had started about 100 years earlier, give or take a few years, and it really had an effect on society. But looking at it just from today's perspective, it doesn't really sound dated or old. It starts off with, the world is charged with the grandeur of God. So, the world is you can't help but notice it's beautiful, but then it goes on to say that beauty is going to flame out, and what I think that means is that we as humans, or nature itself, will eventually do some damage to our world, and we already have. We've cut down rainforests, and we've polluted many areas, and of course those things hadn't quite happened yet in 1877, but certainly the poem was ahead of its time in that aspect. And it just goes on to discuss that basically humans have not wrecked his rod, God's rod. They haven't followed in what they should be. God gave us this world, and we haven't done a great job in taking care of it. And so it is very troubling, and yet this poem is very relevant in that sense. And it sort of ends sort of on a bright note. It says, well, in spite of that, the Holy Ghost, God, whatever you would like to call him, is going to rebuild it all one day. Or so if you're a Christian, you might interpret it in that fashion. And if you're not, you might just say that nature is going to take care of itself in the end. It's going to replenish itself. And so that's the way I saw this poem. It's a very short yet interesting poem because of that. The biggest statement, obviously, is that the world is charged with the grandeur of God, and that's kind of what drew me to reading and reciting this poem, which I'm not good at reciting at all. I have ADHD, and it's very difficult for me to recite anything. You know, I can't even think of my address sometimes on command. So trying to memorize this entire poem has been a very troubling, not troubling, but very difficult process. And I I hope that I did it correctly. Um, and yeah, it's a wonderful poem. It grew on me at first when I read it. I thought, you know, this is because I read it in other classes. I read it a couple times, but I never really enjoyed it because I never analyzed it at all. And really looking at it once, the first line says the world is charged with the grandeur of God. So you think it's just a poem about beauty, but then the next part where it says, but it will flame out, that's kind of a very big contrast for me. And so I was really drawn to it because of that. So I thank you for watching this, if you sat through it all, and yeah, hope you have a great day. Thank you.